40 men in each, they're about 75 feet long. 20% of the men spoke English. In their spare time, they played games like Kegel. They kept their barracks up with pin-ups of American girls, which are on the corner here. These pictures were taken by a Midland Daily News reporter who went out to the camp, and the Army allowed them to come in and take pictures. In 1944, the camp peaked at 700 POWs. In 1945, just about 1,000. Freeland is what I call the quiet camp, but it's also a sister camp. Mount Pleasant exists because of POWs that come out of Freeland. Alma exists because of POWs that come out of Freeland. Probably the summer of 1944, POWs are coming down from Freeland via bus. And then in 1945, the Army finally decides, let's put them in the sugar beet factory and just keep them there. And that's where they're housed for about a month. This is one of the more unusual discoveries that I have had. This is a picture taken outside of Auburn, Michigan. It was taken by the family of K. Etienne, who shared this image with me. And these are POWs working in the 1945 beet harvest. And this picture. This gentleman has a beet knife, which he is showing to the photographer. This gentleman has a sweatshirt on, which I can't quite make out what he's got on that. You can't see it too well, but this gentleman's got his original, well, these two have their infantry caps on. But most of them are wearing the floppy POW caps. That leads us to Alma, 1944. Probably POWs were only here for about a month. They were probably being shipped down with drivers. In 1945, the Michigan Sugar Company had a fire, and yet they still use the sugar warehouse to keep POWs in that after the fire plays. You might run into POWs in Alma. This is from the Alma Record, November 15th, 1945. It says German prisoners are injured in Alma bus and car crash. Frank Willie, age 31, and Jacob Schumacher, age 34, German prisoners of war, among the 250 housed in the sugar warehouse of the Michigan Sugar Company refinery here, and rendering emergency service in the harvesting the beet crop, were casualties named in the official report of a crash of a bus loaded with prisoners in an automobile that occurred in Alma Friday at 6:15 p.m. And it goes on and names one of them who lands up in the yard of L.D. Decker. Do you recognize that name? 1223 Michigan Avenue is where the crash took place. Ultimately, the camps are closed. Were there POWs in St. Louis? I know one man who argues with me quite a bit that yes, they were. He saw tents down by the sugar factory, and that is possible. I would say that's not true. I'd say it's possible. For this reason right here, here's another article, November 29th, 1945. As this newspaper, St. Louis Leader, as this newspaper went to press last week, odds and ends of harvesting the sugar beets in territories of the Lakeshore Sugar Company St. Louis plant and the Michigan Sugar Company's Alma plant were being completed with the help of numerous German prisoners of war, who were welcome replacements for numerous Mexican beet laborers who had already left the area. So it's very, very possible that POWs were working here as well. The one camp that really is the hardest to learn about, and maybe you recognize this picture, the Morning Sun ran an article about 2 years ago. This is actually a picture from the Sun that they used from someone in Mount Pleasant. This is, as best as I can determine, the ice cream place. Go to the east of Doozy's, I don't know, about 200 yards. Back on the south side, and I think that's roughly that area. It's hard to believe Mount Pleasant was that open of my generation. You can remember it being open. I don't remember that, but here are the tents that sat there. And then also, I think the reason we know so little about it is there's only one camp. It's only there one time in the fall of 1945. Again, and they're advertising for workers. And they did St. Louis as well. You can see in the newspaper. Do you need a job? Young boys at school, work we need workers. Please come to work. And also women. And by then come to work at the sugar factory. We need help. Prisoners working in beet fields, estimated 600 obtained in the Army in Mount Pleasant. Well, and there's some stories I could read you, but I'm over my time limit right now. So we'll kind of wind this up. In 1946, late 1945, 46, the Army knows that we have to start thinking about shipping these guys back home. I told my students today, this is a way of trying to shape German minds. This is Der Ruf, this is the voice, or the call, and it is a German newspaper made for POWs at some of these camps, like at Fort Custer, telling them, you know, what are the advantages of a democracy, what are the curses and evils of Nazism when you go back home, think about these things. This is from one I actually obtained, which was the old mimeograph press from a camp in northern Indiana. Some of you might remember this. We talked about legacies of POWs in the area. Just a summer ago, the POW visit to Elma. How many of you saw that? A couple of you. As far as talking about legacies, that kind of goes to the last slide. This is at Fort Custer, and this is one of the men that's being interred. Funerals were always observed. Whenever a man died, the government allowed funerals to take place, and they allowed the POWs to wear their regular uniform. And here you can see there's one of the swastika on the casket. That was allowed. This is late June 1946 down at Fort Custer. The last POWs are getting on the train. They're being shipped back to the East Coast for the ride home. The last few actually leave just after the 4th of July. And they're gone. Records. I talked about records at the start. This is one of the discoveries I had this summer at the National Archives. I found a stack about 3 inches high of records from Fort Custer, and they're being typed up in October of 45 in anticipation for sending these men home. But you can see the codes here. My screen's chopped a little bit off. There's a code there. Again, where are they captured from? What's the nationality, and then their number. You can see it's possible to name these gentlemen. My first read, I could not turn up the 2 Owasso boys. Those were the 2 that I was looking for. My first read, I didn't see them, but they may be on there. Assuming that their names are spelled correctly, that's another question. You know, how accurate are the records spelling out some of these guys? This is my next last picture. As far as legacies, these are the 26 POWs that are buried at Fort Custer, 16 from the Halloween accident. And you can see where the elk were laying, or deer have been laying. I was out there on a winter day. Last January I went down to do some work. You can just see where the deer have just walked in at the Custer Cemetery and laid down. Can't see it too well, but again, these are the people that my one granddad who was a veteran, and my dad who told me this story, but just kind of remembering them. I think the lesson we take home tonight is the stories we hear in our communities. It's important that they're not lost. And many of us know stories, and several people that I've met in the POW journey, say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. It's not worth talking about, or it's not that important, or I don't want my name attached to it because I don't want somebody to think I am somebody." But what many people know in the community about events, is often the key to unlocking the story itself. And people like you are the people in St. Louis that have those stories, and I want to encourage you to think about those. That's my presentation tonight.